I rise this morning to lend my contribution to this motion that has been brought to the Parliament today, a day when we are having a 24-hour lockdown, a day when we maybe should be home contemplating where we would have gone wrong and what it is that we need to do to correct situations. We have come to Parliament in this emergency sitting of the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Speaker, although we have heard the Prime Minister, member for constituency number 7, indicate what appears to be his rationale for coming to the Parliament at this time, and to see of the existing state of emergency with a set of curfews, etc., associated. We recognize that he has identified a duration of 6 months in particular for the extension of this state of emergency, which, as we knew, was imposed on the 15th of June until the 6th of July this year. The Prime Minister, in his usual style, who does not accept blame for anything, launched a vicious attack a moment ago on the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, of which I am the leader at this time. Here we are in the Parliament of this country, where we are hearing in one breath that there should be a common purpose, a togetherness in fighting this particular pandemic. But here is the Prime Minister, the member for number 7, almost within 10 minutes of his presentation, is launching the Nevis Labour Party. He has said a number of things a moment ago, that we have no serious support coming from this side, that the only doctors in the country who have not supported vaccine are on the opposite side and supported the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party. In the middle of starting a discussion to bring both sides of the House together to agree on what he said is one of the fundamental elements that we have to apply in order to resolve the issues, the large number of positive cases, hundreds, to minimize those who will go to our hospitals, to prevent more than the 3 deaths that we've had. He launches a vicious attack against the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, the usual blame game. Because he from whatever you would diagnose him to have, he cannot be blamed for anything. And that is why I'm starting like this. I didn't intend to start like this. I intended to come here, reason as to why we need maybe this state of emergency, why it couldn't have been called before rather than now, reasoning on what is a reasonable duration period for this state of emergency. But here am I, basically responding to the unfortunate statement of the Prime Minister, who is the Minister of National Security, the Minister responsible for NEMA, the Minister responsible for NEOC and HEOC, for the COVID-19, the Minister totally responsible, but comes into this Parliament on this day, the first lockdown, 24 hours lockdown, and blaming others for the state of affairs, when in fact all he has to do is to pick the beam out of his own eye first and then speak of others. It is very unfortunate that this is how we are starting this debate, with the Prime Minister making a presentation, attacking the Labour Party. So it's the Labour Party that is responsible for all that has gone wrong here in the management of this pandemic, because that is what he says. He said we have politicized the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are not managing the pandemic. He is responsible for the management of the pandemic here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We here in this Parliament, we can lend our support. We are not leading it. He must lead it. And he has failed in the leadership of the management of this pandemic here in our country, going on for over almost 18 months. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, I did not intend to start like this. But it is so that no one out there listening would think that we accept any blame. The St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party has been there from the beginning. There from the very beginning. They politicized the management, only selecting those whom they want to select. Others have come forward. We want to be helpful as stakeholders. No, we don't need you. And now he's saying that we are politicizing the management of the pandemic of all things, which is crazy and ridiculous. The time for the game of blaming is over. People are dying. People are dying. And all he could do is blame someone else for the 3 deaths that we've had here in this country over this pandemic. Hundreds of people who have been tested positive. The large numbers who have gone to our hospitals with only 11 respirators there to save people's lives. And they have 18 months they had to put things in place properly. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I didn't intend to start like this, but it was important to respond immediately in this particular way. Because I say again, Mr. Speaker, coming to the Parliament at this particular time, people 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, for a lockdown, begging, no lockdown came. And when the Prime Minister came and addressed the nation, we did not hear a lot of what we should have been told. 15th of June. an address, followed by SROs 21, or maybe 22, 23, 24, 25. A few days after, must have been around the 18th or thereabout, we woke up one morning and we learned that a state of emergency had been imposed by the Governor General by way of proclamation, and another set of SROs were published. It seemed as though the first attempt to introduce curfews, etc., and the management of the situation was seriously legally flawed. So we woke up Wednesday morning and heard that overnight, without any notice, we were under a state of emergency. And new references to our laws were made. Agenda. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask, why did the Attorney General get it wrong the first time? Why did he get it wrong? Is his mind distracted from his work? Why did he get it wrong? Is it that he was being given improper advice? Is it that he didn't clearly understand what it is the Prime Minister was saying to him in their conversations to put these new measures in place? Why did he get it wrong? And what is going to be the consequence of those actions taken by officers in the first few days when we were under a wrong set of SROs and curfews? What happened to the people who would have been sought for punishment under that set of SROs, which we now hear were utterly wrong, misleading, and illegal? And so this is one of the questions I wanted to ask from the very beginning, because it seems as though it has taken us almost 4 weeks to get from there to here. And at last we're now being told that this is the right thing to follow. And so the Governor General now, having declared, I think on the 18th of, we are now seeking to extend that latter declaration or proclamation of the powers that were given to government officials by way of the SRO and proclamation. We are now understanding that this maybe is the way to go. And that is what I'm saying. You're talking about people, blaming people on the other side for politicizing the pandemic and being responsible for where we are today. But what about on his side? What about what appears to be the incompetence of the Attorney General? What about that? Why no mention is being made of that? And we have been blamed himself. Why? And that is why I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, there seems to be something wrong in the leadership of the government at this time. Either there's no proper confidence being placed in our Attorney General, or he's been given mixed signals and missed instructions. And no wonder people out there saying that they need to change the AG, or they're going to change the AG soon. But I ain't getting into their business. But it would appear as if there is some something wrong on that side with regard to the leadership, with regard to the performance of the Attorney General, the performance of the Prime Minister. There seems to be something wrong, and that is what the people of the country are asking. What is it that is wrong in the management of the country? Why the Attorney General can't get it right? And so, Mr. Speaker, that was one of the matters that I really wished to seek some clarification and guidance on. Mr. Speaker, I said these things, Mr. Speaker, because I think people are aware that the government is broken. And if the government is broken, then no doubt one would expect these kinds of mishaps. We were opposed from the beginning, opposed to the state of emergency when it was first initiated. We opposed it as early when it was declared by the proclamation number 6 of 2020 on the 28th day of March in this chamber. We took the matter to court, yes, as the member for number 7 is saying. And even though, Mr. Speaker, the court may not have ruled in our favor for several reasons. For several reasons, Mr. Speaker. That does not mean that what took place there in 2020 with the imposition of the state of emergency, that does not make it right. Mr. Speaker, there are fundamental rights enshrined in our very Constitution. Look at the schedule with regard to the independence order. Right there is a clear declaration that people's basic rights must be protected. And even though the court may not have given support to our plea before it, maybe because of lack of appropriate evidence, that does not mean that it is right, appropriate evidence. That does not mean that it is right for us to be on another state of emergency for a prolonged period of 6 months. That is what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. There is no need for us to go there again for 6 months of locking down. Because we have seen, Mr. Speaker, that there are fundamental flaws in the management of the pandemic, why we are where we are today, Mr. Speaker. Fundamental flaws in the management, Mr. Speaker, why we are where we are here today.
Mr. Speaker, importantly, this is a serious matter, and the member for number 6 in his usual style deliberately said that we are here about a 6-month lockdown. That is not before the Parliament at all. No 6
for a duration of 6 months.
Yeah, but you said lockdown.
With lockdowns and other things.
No, that
I'm not saying that it's a 6-month lockdown. Listen, sit down and listen.
That's what you said.
That's what you need to do. Sit down and listen.
Honourable member for number 6, that is unparliamentary indicating to a member to sit down. Clearly, what was said, there's some ambiguity there. The honourable member rose on a point of order. You, honourable members, you have reiterated what you said or what you meant.
Yes.
Let's move on.
Right. Let's move on. No, look, that is something going to rise on. Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, that we may not have gotten it right in the court, but that does not mean our point is wrong. And instead, Mr. Speaker, of thinking that this cannot be seriously taken into consideration with regard to the duration of the state of emergency, I am saying that there are other reasons why we are where we are today with regard to the management of the pandemic, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our people are enduring enormous hardships. Over 4,000 people initially at the start of the pandemic lost their jobs. 4,000 people lost their jobs. People who legally are due their severance payments have not yet received them. And there is no good reason that is being advanced by this government. In his own words, the Minister of Finance, only 2017 people out of 4,000 people have been paid redundancy or severance payments.
Mr. Speaker, again, the member for number 6 is being dishonest in the parliament.
Dishonest?
I have never, point of order, Mr. Speaker, we have never had 4,000 applications before the Labour Department for severance.
Who lost their jobs? You're not listening. That is it. Who
Mr.
lost their jobs?
Mr. Speaker, the member for number 6 ought to know, if he would simmer down, he ought to know that not every person who lost a job can make a claim to the severance fund. So you can only deal with those who have made a claim.
What is this really?
And at this point, over $35 million
What is this? What is this?
The severance fund.
Member for number 7. Honourable member for number 6. There's a point of order. Listening to point of order, to me, it's a valid point of order. Because he's stating it's not all who would have lost their job are entitled to apply for severance.
I didn't say that, Mr. Speaker.
So
I didn't say that.
Please.
Lost their jobs.
But the honourable member, in making his point of order, is clarifying for the record what is in fact the reality of the situation. It's not all who have lost their jobs are entitled to apply for severance. That's my understanding of the point of order. Please continue.
Mr. Speaker, again I said, as far as I have been understanding from releases from the Prime Minister, only 2017 people have been paid their severance payments. And we know well over 4,000 people have lost their jobs in this country. And so the question that remains is, when are those others who are due their severance payments, when will they get them? I don't know the numbers, but I'm asking, when will they be paid their severance payments? Mr. Speaker, the small businessmen, those who are in big business as well, but the small businessmen, those who are affiliated in particular with the tourist industry, the taxi drivers, etc., those who were in the hotels, Mr. Speaker, when are they really going to get some relief if this is going to continue as a state of emergency for the next 6 months. Where is the government's package of relief over the next 6 months? It comes here to talk about give us more time with regard to the state of emergency. But at the same time, we know that people are suffering. It's only a few days ago at the weekend, he said to people, if you come to town to shop and you go supermarket to supermarket and you can't get what you want because of the lines, go home, pray and fast. Now, who the heck could do that? Who is going to go home, pray and fast as their children there with wide eyes open, begging them for something? Who is going to do that?
What's your language, sir?
Mr. Speaker, again, I make the point. There is no seriousness about the people's welfare. Coming here for 1 to 6 months extension. But where is the package of support for the people, the ordinary people of this country, who have lost their jobs, who have lost their livelihoods? After all, people's lives matter. People's lives matter, Mr. Speaker. So we come here, 6 months request. But where is the package of support for people who are suffering and who have been suffering for 18 months since this pandemic has been around? And so, Mr. Speaker, again, I ask the question, the 6 months extension of this state of emergency is meaningless if there is inappropriate management of the pandemic with regard to those since our borders are still open. It is unfortunate that government officials stigmatized case number 46. But case number 46 could not have arrived if there wasn't case 47. Case 47, there needs to be an investigation in case 47. How did he get here, or she get here? Why would it be that they could give when they should have been properly checked to ensure that they were virus-free? Why? Who are these people, man or woman? Who are they? Why they were given special privileges in not being tested when we have now everybody stigmatizing case number 46, the young lady who does not deserve that kind of stigmatization because it's the failure in the system. And if the Prime Minister knows anything about this, he should stand up now on a point of order and give us the answer, Mr. Speaker. That is what we are saying. Sure. Yes, that's a good place to be. Mr. Speaker, that's a good place to be, at the foot of the cross. Mr. Speaker, these are the fundamental questions that the ordinary people are asking out there. Another lockdown. Now we're here 6 months. I didn't know how long it was going to go for, but now we are being told 6 months. 6 months. And nothing comes with it here to the Parliament to say this is the stimulus economic package that we bring with this particular resolution before the Parliament today. Nothing. Mr. Speaker, I want to make the point, Mr. Speaker. We are here because of the failures of this government. The failure of the Prime Minister, and what to some extent is the failure of the Attorney General, because there has been a failure on the part which speaks to incompetence with regard to the community quarantine and isolation centers. There has been a failure on the part of the government. to anticipate community spread, which, as we saw it back in June, the country was totally unprepared for. There was incompetence, Mr. Speaker, in the failure to provide adequate relief for those who are jobless, as I mentioned before. Failure, it would appear, to follow proper health protocols relating to our visitors. And that is a measure of incompetence in the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we're talking about putting politics, Labour putting politics in the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. How could we put politics in it? What politics are we putting in it? Mr. Speaker, there is no politicization on our part. Prime Minister started to beat his chest when in fact nothing yet had happened in St. Kitts and Nevis. Gave out medals upon medals for nothing that has been done. Now, the test of the metal, you want to blame someone else. The Prime Minister has been most indecisive in taking necessary action to save lives. Indecisive. Why only today we are having this sitting of the Parliament? Why only now, from Friday, we are hearing about the 24-hour lockdowns that will be days? You know what's happening over there today? Our children are doing the exams.
And provision has been made for them.
You know how much disruption has taken place over the last few weeks? This could have been settled a long time ago. Long time ago. The indecisiveness on the part of the Prime Minister and the government, that's why we are where we are, why we are here today, Mr. Speaker. That is why we are here, Mr. Speaker. There has to be decisiveness in taking action, Mr. Speaker, because lives are at stake. Mr. Speaker, I believe very seriously that the government has failed us because of the high level of incompetence, and coming here today, a lockdown day, during a state of emergency, several weeks after we saw the cluster spread throughout the community. It is far too little and far too late, Mr. Speaker. Far too little and far too late. Lives have been lost. Lives have been lost, Mr. Speaker. I want to make the point further, Mr. Speaker, that when we hear people talk about all society approach, what all society approach? If you are constantly trying to abuse the rights on which members of the opposition are standing, how could that be an authority? It's just lip service. It's just talk. Today, Mr. Speaker, I believe that certain other actions on the part of the government could be beneficial to our people as a result of the management, the proper management of the pandemic. But that is not forthcoming. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that this is not forthcoming because there's a level of incompetence that exists. There was no plan at all for schools when we had the dramatic lockdown a few weeks ago. There was no plan whatsoever, it would appear, to properly service those who were in isolation and who were in quarantine. Because if there was proper planning, after doing your tabletop analyses, you must have known that if there is community spread, how far and wide it could go. But there was obviously no advanced planning for this kind of community spread that we've had. Mr. Speaker, a lot of what can just simply doing like what E.K. Flanders has done. E.K. Flanders is one out of the goodness of his heart started to respond to calls of people in distress. So what is NEOC's role and responsibility?
What is your role?
What is NEOC's role? Why, a person, popular DJ on radio, having been called so many times by people who are listening to him on radio, went about and started a campaign to raise funds and foodstuff to bring to people in quarantine and isolation centers.
What did you do?
Mr. Speaker, if you had planned properly for the quarantines,
What did you do?
you would not have people who are tested positive remaining in households with large families, getting them infected in the process while they are waiting on a place to be sent by those who are managing the pandemic. These things should never happen. So, Mr. Speaker, again, as I said before, instead of blaming others, look at your failures, your incompetence, your inept management, your indecisiveness, and you would have the answers as to what to do next when possibly another cluster spread comes. Prime Minister is asking that we here on this side must join him. We're not joining no him. We join and stand with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. We stand and we join with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis in being better able to work out solutions to their problems and help their livelihoods, those in particular who have been severely affected. Mr. Speaker, if there was any seriousness on the part of the government in some cases, why should we have had someone who is working in the office of the Prime Minister named as a super spreader and refusing for days to go and get tested, Mr. Speaker? Why could that happen? Why should that happen? You know how many people would have been infected, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, for the record,
Yes, point of order, yes.
sometimes I wonder whether the member for number 6 in this parliament is being an old-time politician or a medical doctor. We are dealing with a health pandemic, and his approach is to tell untruth. For the record, there is no one in my office who has been described as a super spreader. No one. And I am surprised that 6 could go so low to stigmatize persons. I'm very disappointed.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Member, if I may interject here. Honourable Member for number 6.
Yes.
Your statement just now with respect to someone in the Prime Minister's office being identified as a super spreader and being allowed to continue to work. If you do not have any evidence of that.
Mr. Speaker, I have evidence.
The Honourable
So
Member,
don't prompt me. Don't prompt me because I won't call names.
Honourable Member for number 6, you know
I
who
won't
the
call
business
names.
here. You have said it. The Honourable Prime Minister,
Yes.
who is affected directly because that's his office, has stood and denied that. So the statement is such a serious one.
Yes.
I would have thought if you had evidence to that effect, you will bring it to this Parliament and find a way of getting it to the Speaker before you rise and make such a statement.
I will.
So I find it very unfortunate because what is said cannot be taken back, you know.
Mr. Speaker.
It cannot be. It is out there already.
Mr. Speaker.
And I am saying, as a matter of fact, the matter is so serious. My advice to you, well, I want you to do two things. One, withdraw the statement until you could provide me some evidence that it is so.
Okay.
And two, I believe the statement you made is so serious that if you can, there is something where you can bring emotion to this house to deal with matters like that, you know.
Do you want me to?
But if you have the evidence, bring the matter to the house and let's debate it.
Of course.
As a substantive motion.
Of course. Yeah, but what about when
Honourable members, I am speaking to a specific statement made,
exactly
which is so unfortunate. I must comment on it, which I'm doing now.
Yes, okay.
So I'm asking you to withdraw that statement with
Mr.
respect
Speaker,
to what you said.
I have no problem. When the Prime Minister, several minutes ago, accused us over here.
Honourable member, we're talking two different.
Mr. Speaker,
speaking specifically.
I want to move on because I don't want to really break my train of thought.
Honourable member,
I withdraw it, as I said.
Honourable member
withdraw
for number 6. No, you're not going to cross talk with me and get away with it. I'm dealing with a specific matter. You made a statement with respect to something which occurred in the Prime Minister's office. He has denied it. I find it is of such significance and outrage that I am asking you to withdraw it without any qualification.
Mr. Speaker.
And then we move on.
I withdraw it, as I said before.
Thank you. Let's move on.
And I will bring the appropriate evidence for you. I will do that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely clear that certain people think they can make accusations here in this Parliament and get away with it. We on this side, as I said, and you saw how I started, came here in good faith, trying to really put forward a case as to why they should not go for 6 months. But from the very beginning, there has been an attack on the leader of the opposition and the opposition bench here. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when I make statements like those, I would not know facts, Mr. Speaker. And that is why those statements are being made.
Honourable member, I find that you, even though you have withdrawn it, by even in a way referring to it.
No, I am not.
Honourable member, you've said you have facts, and that is why you made the statement. It must be the statement that I've asked you to withdraw. You're referring to.
All the statements I've made so far.
No, we're talking about that one statement, honourable member. So I'm asking you not to go back there. Don't touch it again.
But I don't have to go there, you know. Because, Mr. Speaker, how much more time do I have?
You began at began at 11 o'clock on the dot. 15 minutes.
Right. And so, Mr. Speaker, my concern really is if we are going to extend the state of emergency for 6 more months, how are people going to live? You can hear the snickering over there because how people live is not important to him. You can hear the snickering. How are people going to live? Are they going to just simply pray and fast? The children will die. I am talking about his advice to parents. Go home, pray and fast. Well, as far as I know, a fast is just drinking water or something like that. And pray. I am saying, Mr. Speaker, the government has lost. The government has lost the feelings for people who are suffering. Lost the feelings of people who are suffering, Mr. Speaker. The issues that have led to the cluster spread, the community spread, need to be resolved. We need to be certain that people who are going to be quarantined, that the authorities would be properly managing those centers so that people don't have to be sending around voicemails and voice notes asking people to bring them food, etc. This has to be the responsibility of those who are managing the centers. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we again say that vaccines are not the only answer. It's only one of the things that is to be applied in the management of this pandemic. And let me emphasize very, very clearly that vaccines or vaccination cannot replace the stimulus packages, cannot replace the government ideas that are being implemented to resolve the human issues that our people are suffering from. Vaccine is only one tool. And every person in this country, far and wide, side, we are for vaccination. We are pro-choice. We understand very clearly that even though vaccines can help the situation, there are serious issues associated with these vaccines. Serious issues. And they are documented all over the world. Documented all over the world. But we are not saying that vaccines would not help. Of course, vaccines can help. But that is not the panacea. That is not the solution for all of the problems that we are experiencing here. Mr. Speaker, we clearly have said that people who have made up their minds, exercising their free will of choice to take the vaccines, go ahead and take it. But you cannot threaten those who, for good reason, have stated clearly that they do not wish to have the vaccines for several reasons. You can't browbeat them into taking it, threatening them with their jobs and possibly their lives, because some people's jobs are their livelihoods. You can't do that. And if that is what the other side is deliberately misinterpreting, then they are dead wrong. I want to make it absolutely clear, Mr. Speaker. There are several different things that we must do. People can be given choice. People must be given choice, Mr. Speaker. Let them choose whether to take it or not. And if they are going to take it, which one they would want to take. That's important. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, persons must not be browbeaten into accepting a vaccine because they have to choose between their job and taking a vaccine. Those things cannot work. And if our whole program of managing the pandemic is based only on vaccine, it will fail. Because everybody would be vaccinated possibly, or everybody could be immunized. But does that mean that people's livelihoods would have returned? Everybody, yes, eventually can become immunized, especially with herd immunity. But would they be relieved of their suffering? Would they get back their jobs? This claim that if you vaccinate, you're going to get back your job is a farce. The government needs to give a proper stimulus package. It needs to give us an idea as to outlook while we are under a state of emergency. Give us that economic outlook. Tell us what the economy is going to be like. Tell us how many new jobs would be created for the benefit of our people. Tell me how many of those who are presently unemployed would be brought back into employment. These are the things that we need to know instead of playing the blame game of the Labour Party. We refuse to accept any blame. The blame is over there. The failures that they have made in the management of this COVID-19 pandemic so far. Tell us about case number 47. How did he get into the country without being properly checked? How did he give our young lady case number 46? How did it happen? Up to now, no investigation, it would appear, has been done. This is where the problem lies. If case 47 was not positive, and here in our country, case 46 could not have contracted the virus and spread it to other people. That is wrong. It is unfair for us to blame the young lady. What about blaming case 47? Mr. Speaker, we need to have an investigation into this. Mr. Speaker, when we would have brought all these matters to the fore, when we would have had the benefit of explaining to the people how they are going to live for the next 6 months on the state of emergency, then the government would have been doing something for the benefit of the COVID-19 pandemic. There have been too many failures, too much incompetence, too much lack of delivery, and as a result of that, people have lost their lives. Up to now, there's a controversy, it would appear, with regard to one of those who has passed away. May God bless her soul. I saw an open letter in the social media. Something went amiss, it would appear, at the hospital. We need to know what went on there, what it is that went wrong. While we're hearing people went in COVID negative and coming out being COVID positive. What is happening up there? These are the matters that need to be discussed for the benefit of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, instead of just simply relying on another 6 months of state of emergency here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to close, Mr. Speaker, by giving my support to those who are seriously engaged in the management. The politicization of a lot of your functions that you perform is not making it easy for you to discharge your duties. I want to commend the CMO simply because I heard that she had resigned. I want to thank her for still being on the job.
Mr. Speaker.
I want to thank her for still being on the job, Mr. Speaker. I understand the pressures that she may be under, but I want to thank her for still being on the job, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Honourable member for number 6. Number 6, yes. I'll handle this, honourable member for number 7. With respect to the statement about the CMO, I happen to follow the CMO clearly say she did not resign, she never resigned. So,
Mr. Speaker,
please.
that is why I thank her for being on the job. That's what I said, you know. I thank her for being on the job.
Yeah, but
that's what I said.
Honourable member for
because
number
just
6.
As you heard, I heard.
Honourable member for number 6. Let's. Yes, let's. I'm kind of lost for words here. The fact that she said it officially and publicly, I really do not think you should even mention it. That's the simple point I'm making. But you cannot come and say you heard she resigned. She said, right after the matter made it in the public domain, I did not resign. I'm dedicated to my work. I am still here.
Yes.
So do not come in this chamber and create.
Speaker, I thank her for being on the job.
Well,
that's what I said.
Let me ask you a simple question. Do you think it was proper for you even to say you heard that she resigned?
Of course, because
knowing that she said she never resigned, she didn't.
Because
do you think it is still proper?
The public, I think, needs clarification, and that is why I am bringing it here. She's still on the job, and I commend her for being on the job.
Let us move on.
Yes. So I was saying that these are some of the issues that we really need to deal with. It must not just simply be an extension of the state of emergency for 6 months. We need to address all of the issues associated with this pandemic. We need to address all of the areas of incompetence and failures on the part of the government. We need to ask the government to stop politicize the management of the pandemic and stop playing the blame game. Because if you really want to play the blame game, there's a lot of evidence of blaming. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Right Honourable Dr. Denzil Douglas.